Welcome to the Hive and Nest, a place to thrive and be your best, and to live and raise our kids up under the freedom with which we've been blessed. Hive and Nest Homeschool with Her Majesty Queen Bee and your Uncle Owl. Welcome to Hive and Nest episode 9. Today we're going to be talking about the Socratic Approach part 2. So if you guys would like to give us a refresher of part 1, let us know what the 4 stages are and what the Socratic Approach is.
Yep. So the Socratic Approach is Uncle Owl's digested and assimilated into his being the 4 stages that are described in Plato's Republic in the first part about the best way to handle the education of our children, and broken up into 4 stages. We discussed the first 3 for a really good session last time. We'll get into more of those coming soon, and we kind of wanted to discuss the 4th one in this one. But to bring us up to speed, the 4 stages are pop quiz to Your Majesty. Would you like to give it a shot?
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah. The first stage, ages-ish, 4-ish through 8-ish. So until about age 8, around there, more or less, we're working on how to be a good person, how to behave in the world. It's a lot more sensory focused and exploring and basic numeracy and basic literacy. And then stage 2 is discipline over the body. So this is around ages 8 to 12. And it's working on self-control and having discipline over the body and getting really tired and getting wiggles out, but learning how to control themselves. Stage 3 is around ages 12 to 16. And this is more control over the mind. And this is where they start getting more interested in geeking out and serious education, but through play and self-directed, and just geeking out and learning how to geek out on things and getting control over their mind. And then stage 4, we will find out.
Yeah, actually, I loved what you said in the second stage. It's applicable to all stages. We all need to get our wiggles out. But the difference is in the first stage, you need to get your wiggles out, and you're not really it's not a huge deal that you don't know how to control yourself. But by ages 8 to 12, say a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old that enjoys getting their wiggles out, but has absolutely no control over it. So like get your wiggles out, but you know how to rein yourself back in is a big deal. And that I liked that you said that. And then the third stage is the first form of education. So up until the third stage, it was moral development more than anything else. Basic numeracy and literacy is the extent of academic needs from your ages 0 to 10 or 11 or 12. Then at ages 12 to 16, and for lots of girls, it might be a little closer to 10, and lots of boys, it might be closer to 14. That's totally fine. You're going to want to be introduced to the first round of education, which will be more an amusement than anything else. It's about exploring and being interested in something, and then in a self-directed, self-induced, self-compelled way, geek out, become very involved with understanding and learning whatever that is. And it can change. It doesn't have to be just one thing. It'd be best, in fact, if it changes at least a couple times, but you're not required to know 20 things. We'd rather you know 1 or 2 things really well than 80 things not so well at all. And then that establishes discipline over the mind. If you have discipline over the body and you've proven it, and you have discipline over the mind and you know how to learn, you are on the way. I should say self-learn. You are now on the way to joining the 4th stage, which the 4th stage can be summarized in a single word, which is apprenticeship. The 4th stage is when the pursuit of knowledge takes a deeper and more serious tone. The purpose is to actually understand something at a practical and real and useful level. And so it doesn't have to be 16, but 8 to 12, 12 to 16, 4 to 8, 8 to 12, 12 to 16. By 16, in a couple of years, you're going to be able to vote. You can probably already drive. The least you could do is be useful. And so up until this point, we were trying to establish someone being able to be useful. And then to ask a quick question, and I'm asking it to myself, and I have a response, but I'm not saying it's the only response, but I'd like to just pose it to us to just chat about for a minute. So In Plato and Socrates, their vision for how this education proceeds, uh, it's a rigorous pursuit of knowledge and moral development. But at what point does it transfer from moral development to pursuit of knowledge? And at what point does it transfer from maybe play? Does the focus shift from play to deeper studies, and why? And I'd just like to ask that out and maybe start with Your Majesty if you have a response, and then I'll give mine.
So I think for I'm just thinking back on my childhood and on watching my kids grow up. Um, I think moral development going into play, I, I feel like it's a gradual thing. I don't see it happening like, one day they're 7, the next day they're 8, and they transition from one day they're working on moral development, and the next day they're working on, on their birthday, they're working on bodily discipline. I don't see it as that. I see it as more of a gradual thing. And this kind of was evidence to my little girls when and when they would play with their dolls or their ponies, they all used to play together at the table, at the kitchen table, and and they would act out morality. They would work out how they viewed life in
Hmm.
general, but how it seemed to advance. So when they were, 4 playing, it was different than when they were 8 playing the same things. It was playing family and playing that kind of stuff. It seemed to be gradual to me.
Yeah. Quick side note story about playing and playing family. There were these there were these twin girls that were younger than me and older than my younger sister, so they were good friends with my sister. And then we would be over at their house because she had those two twins had two older brothers that were the same age as me and my brothers, and so we all got along a lot and we played together a lot. They lived 3 doors down, which is a nice little nod to the band. And there was this one time where I was over at their house and the twin girls were like, "Let's play kitties," and their mom goes, "Girls," and this was your Uncle Al back in the day. The girl, he doesn't want to play kitties, and I was like, "Of course I want to play kitties. I'm the orange kitty," and it was just fun because it didn't seem to be a problem. And their mom was awesome. Their mom and dad were both great people.
I have a video of my 3 little girls going around playing kitties on all fours and meow, meow. It's really
The
cute.
best, the best, absolutely. But yeah, so the play of the moral development is exactly what you just said. It's you're dramatizing, you're acting out the way to be in certain scenarios. And uh, one of my favorite shows that everyone should watch is Bluey. You should be doing everything that Bluey does with your kids, but also just watch it because they're really short. They're only like 7, 8 minutes, and they cover so many aspects of life. But like, when a kids get together to play shops, they know that there's an attendant, they know that there's a cashier, they know that there's like a manager, and they know that there's a customer. And the customer even comes in often with a dog or a cat or whatever when you're playing that way, right? And so in that little scenario, everyone adopts the personality structure of whatever their quote character was. And the fact that when you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, you can do that is actually amazingly sophisticated when you think about it. The fact that they can adopt some other practical role as a personality in a short little playing with each other scenario is it's actually pretty wild. So that's the play that's going on mostly between ages 0 to 8, and then the play that turns into discipline over the body, it should include a lot of sports. That's from 0 to 12. This is the first 2 stages still. But that play is different from the education play that goes on in stage 3, which is going to lead you to stage 4, which is that play is playing. You could say exploring. It's more like you're setting off on your boat, your sailboat to cross the Atlantic to go discover the Indies. You're exploring something that you're very interested in. And that doesn't need to have a bunch of tests about it. It doesn't need to have a bunch of formal evaluations about it. It needs to just be given to them to, as you always say, which is my favorite way to put it, is geeking out. They need to geek out. And that should imply play, not serious, rigorous study, right?
Yeah, and I think one key difference between the two types of play in my mind is that when they're young, they're playing together, and when they're older, they've already learned to play together and they are setting out on their own adventure. So the difference to me would, one difference I should say to me would be playing as a group and playing independently.
I love that because I think that's exactly right. It's there's the play up to the maybe age 12 should be related to both your moral and virtuous character personally, but it's also related to a bunch of other people. Yes, this play related to education is much more like I love how you just put that the setting out on an adventure. And that it's worth saying this. John Adams, he said that a scholar is always made alone. And that's really right. It's like it doesn't mean that you are literally in solitude. It means no one can think for you. No one can learn for you. No one can become excellent at something that you want to do for you. You have to do that yourself. And so it's very much a personal odyssey, a personal journey. So I enjoy that you said that. It's really right. And so that leads us to the point, which is the fourth stage. And I'm going to ask another question because it's going to build up to this fourth stage as well. And I know you like talking about Maslow. I do too. It's very important to discuss Maslow's hierarchy, and the Socratic approach is both my favorite, tooting my own horn, toot toot, and the one that, as far as I can tell, captures the Maslow's hierarchy of needs better than any other group discussion that I've seen. Lots of people touch on it. Lots of people discuss it. It's not that it's ignored outside of the Socratic approach by your Uncle Al, but Maslow's upper tier needs, which are aiming themselves toward your eventual self-actualization and experiencing independence, they are based on the previous foundations. You don't get to self-actualization when you don't know if you have enough food for the end of the week, or you don't live in a house, you live in a box, or you live in a makeshift palm house that is underneath the nearby overpass. I know it's interesting to think about that because everyone's like, well, no one's in that bad of a state. And actually, there are lots of people who live at home with their family who that's how they feel. They don't feel they're in a safe and supported environment. And so you don't get to those self-actualization points if those things aren't taken care of. We're going to move on.
I have a quick
Oh
question.
yeah, good.
So with the stages, and in we haven't really got too far into it yet, but in the fourth stage, you mentioned that that's when like you have time to learn everything else. So in this approach, it's more of a you care less about like strict adherence to academics and curriculum and things like that. But in certain states, like the state I live in, there's actually testing requirements in order to be, and I'm doing air quotes, compliant with the state's homeschool guidelines. So I'm wondering if there is like in this approach, I think the first stage is like third grade is when you have to do it. So
Okay.
the when you're trying to like teach your kids their like basic reading and writing and arithmetic, is there like how should you, because I know that you guys talked about, if they don't want to do it, don't do it, don't do worksheets. What would your suggestion be as far as getting the kids ready for these tests? Like my 7-year old, she has hers coming up soon-ish. I mean, she's already way ahead of where she's supposed to be for her age, so we still have like a couple of years, I guess. But for me personally, I don't want to push it on her too much, but I also
Hmm.
know that in order to continue to have her at home and not have the state mandate that we send her to school, we have to, you like, for lack of a better word, she has to learn these things before a certain point.
You want to take that first, Your Majesty?
Um, yeah, so in your state, do you have to have a test or can you also do a teacher evaluation?
So for this state, it has to be like a monitored or proctored exam. So I think the most common one is I think it's like the Ohio school something or other, but it's like an
Hmm.
assessment test. So yeah, it has to be like a full on like proctored exam.
And does it just go through math and reading and writing, or is it through history and science? Do you have a choice in that?
I think it's a generalized assessment test that has a little bit of everything in it from what I've seen. I've only looked at the like sample questions for like third grade, but yeah, I think there's actually from what I was looking at, there's certain requirements for each like category of education, but I think the test itself is kind of like a general, yeah, like a little bit of everything in one test.
Hmm. I have
Uh,
two responses to that, but I'll let Your
no,
Majesty
go
go
ahead.
first. Yeah.
Go ahead.
My first response is um, do recall two major features of the Socratic approach is that it is not a teaching methodology. So this is not saying what you should or should not attempt to engage with your children from an academic perspective or teach them. And basic numeracy and literacy is not easy. It's going to take time. So what we're saying here is not a prescription or a specific outline of events of how you go about delivering academics. The big point is this is what you should be thinking about from a bird's eye view, understanding how to aim your education of your child at the bullseye of have raising a successful adult who's doing something that they are very good at, that they love, that the world needs. So that's the one important thing to point out. That's not to say that you don't engage with academic things before age 10 or 11 or 12, because uh, what you just said is really right. There may be some, and I'm honestly, I'm okay with it. There may be some various forms of proofs that you're going to have to give that your children are advancing. The main thing to think about is that that only takes 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, like maybe a couple hours a week, every week for a very long time. So as long as you're attending to it in any degree, you should be tracking at least as well as the middle of the crowd that's in the public education, which is what those tests are going to be aimed at. They're going to be aimed at capturing, are you at least keeping up with the middle of the crowd for that approximate age level?
That's exactly what I was going to say right there.
Yeah. And then the second part is, and maybe no one wants to hear Uncle Al say this, so I'm your Uncle Al and I get to say it. You could also just move. And I don't mean you personally, Sober Dad Pod. I mean, you should seriously consider where you should have your children. And if there's a state that's going to, I don't want to call it harassment, but if there's a state that's going to be reaching into your family to control how you raise your children, and there's an available state that's going to do that a whole lot less that you could move to, I would recommend doing that. Uh, you're free to do that. You're not free to buck the system from within it and not, suffer some consequences. So I totally appreciate the question. The question is, what if you're in a situation where you can't necessarily give a perfectly personally fitted education to your children because they're going to be monitored in some way by these evaluative tests. And, I just completely agree with that. That's exactly right. You have to be taking those things into account. And I don't think they're going to be as hard as most people think. I don't think they're going to be looking for your children to be amazingly, phenomenally successful. They're just making sure that they're tracking along with, a rough estimate of the average child at that age. But I also would like to say very clearly, I'm a believer in the freedom and independence of families. And so if you're in a place where the manner in which they are mandating you prove that your children are growing at a rate that satisfies their prerogative, I would say move.
I actually, I was kind of jokingly say the same thing, but
Yep.
if you look at some of the issues that people have had, and if you put yourself in the situation, ahead of time that maybe somebody's going to come knocking on your door, and I mean, it might be worth the move.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for that. I've done some research on homeschooling requirements, and our state is like by far not nearly the worst one. It's actually considered
Hmm.
pretty loose. But yeah, there are some states where it's a lot more stringent. You literally have to have a written out curriculum that you have to submit every single year to the state. And so I do agree with the, changing location might be a little easier than trying to come up with a full curriculum every single year.
Hmm. It might,
New
but that,
York is one of those, and I have a friend
Yeah.
that that lived in New York, and she homeschooled successfully up until high school, and she ended up moving. But it, what I would really recommend in those states is to get involved with a homeschool co-op and with other homeschoolers because they know how to be compliant with the homeschool laws and still maintain family education freedom.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the basic recommendation I would have, which is number one, no one is being encouraged by the Hive and Nest to be, contrarian in your state because you're just going to suffer consequences, and you don't necessarily need to do that to your family. Number two, the state tests, the progress tests are not really looking for mastery; they're just looking for progress. And then third is there is nothing wrong with taking a good long look at your life and deciding whether or not you're in the best place for your family. And that is very complicated. I'm not telling you what to do. We are not telling you what to do. We are just encouraging you to take that seriously because that might be something you should think about. But yeah, that's a perfectly good question. And a reminder in the final analysis of all things that we've said so far is the Socratic approach is not a curriculum. This is a long draft of healthy thought. It is a spiritual, crisp, brisk of cool water to encourage you to have the right intentions and motivations and long-term bullseye of what you want from your child and how to watch for that and how to be a participant in that for your children and your family.
I agree. And thank you very much. Yeah, it's almost for me, it's more of like after hearing it from you guys, it's more of like a mindset, like knowing where you want to guide things. And, just it gives it, for me personally, it helps me evaluate where we're at now. And I'm like, oh yeah, like that makes a lot of sense with like all of my kids still fall in like stage one as far as the age range, but I can already
Yep.
see that my 7-year-old is, and even my 5-year-old, they're already like playing with stage two through like gymnastics and everything. And then my 7-year-old's also already starting to kind of geek out on like we're pretty sure science is going to be her thing because she's always just telling me random facts that she found out about some animal or things like that. So and she's just been like we always catch her with like zoo books or we found this old stash of zoo books at Goodwill and we bought like a giant stack of them and she's always just flipping through zoo books in her free time and watching like videos about animals and things. So yeah, I can see those developmental things happening in the kids, and it's pretty cool to like actually have a reference point, like put a name to it.
That is so beautiful, and I can't imagine that that's not extremely rewarding to recognize that that's happening. I think it's a really wonderful way of putting it. So for the sake of where we wanted to head with our chat, we'll go ahead and dive in now to stage 4 of the Socratic approach, and to recognize two things. It is, I'm going to bring back up Maslow's hierarchy now. It is not a stage that you should rush. It is a stage that has to be accomplished and then recognized as such. The child is going to reach this stage through their own efforts or not. I don't mean there isn't any kind of guiding. I like what you just said about guiding the process. We're definitely like tour guides once you get to the third and fourth stage. They're on their own exploration, and you maybe help them with reading the compass and the map as much as you can, but it really has to be their own work. And in many ways, if they reach age 14, 15, 16, and they are not the kind of person who is prepared for a disciplined, definite, structured, rigorous pursuit of knowledge or apprenticeship or training period, it actually means you haven't done the first 3 stages. And trying to make better 18-year-old students who have not had their previous stages robustly developed is much harder than just getting young children to play and develop their moral character, and getting slightly older children to learn how to handle themselves and exhibit self-control, and then give middle school age children, so ages 11 to 14 or so, opportunity to enjoy sinking deeply into a topic or three. If they haven't done that by age 15 or 16 or 17, any of those things before, you're going to have to set sail with a ship that's unfinished. You're going to have to start working on remedial work while you're trying to develop adult level, competent level skills and abilities. That is very difficult, and that is one of the reasons why a lot of people mature between ages 8 and 13 or ages 13 to 39, because the same things that should happen when they're young take much less time. They take a lot longer when you start getting a little older and you get beset by all of life's responsibilities, and your character and development has already kind of happened, and you're stuck in a habit and you need to break that. That's very difficult. So the fourth stage is to reach the point, or attend to and attempt to reach the point of self-actualization based upon the prior levels of human needs, the hierarchy of needs as outlined by Maslow. So in the first couple stages, you're giving your children safety and security and a loving home and food and opportunity to learn and opportunity to interact with others and develop a sense of usefulness and welcome and propriety for where they are in their life up until around age 10. Without getting that firmly established, it's very difficult to build stages 3 and 4 on top of that. And I'd like to turn it over to Your Majesty Queen Bee to discuss a little bit further about how the Maslow's foundations are reaching this point in the fourth stage.
Okay, so yeah, the very bottom, the psychological needs like food and shelter and water, those hopefully will be met, not only in children, hopefully by the time they're, well, always, but in the 4 to 8 age range of the first level,
Hmm.
psychological needs or physiological needs rather, and safety
Right.
needs, predictability, stability, insulation from threats. They really can't build moral character. They're not going to be working on numbers if they are threatened. And
Hmm.
then, so the first level is physiological needs, second is safety, and third is love needs. And the third level, I think, love and affection from their parents, of course, but then friendship and intimacy, they're kind of working on that as they're in the second level, 8 to 12, working with friends and having a sense that they are accepted in outside of their family as well. Um, and so that to me, I think would match up with the second level. And so while they're working on friendship and love needs, they're also working on like they're working on who they want to be friends with. The morality has hopefully set in a little bit, so they know they don't want to hang out with the bad kids. Um, they want to hang out with the better kids for themselves.
You mean me when I was back at that age?
Hopefully, while you've gained a sense of morality, hopefully it was in the
Exactly.
earlier. Um, and and then as they move into the third stage, hopefully they've already got the friendship and they're working on the esteem needs like independence and achievement. That should go with the third stage in my mind, so that you're already up to the fourth level of Maslow's hierarchy by the time you hit the third stage of serious play and geeking out. You're working on achievement and prestige and independence and self-respect when
Yes.
you're at the third level, and you're working on geeking out and control over your mind. And so by the time you hit the fourth level of self-actualization, you've gone all the way through Maslow's hierarchy. And the reason I like Maslow's hierarchy so much is it just puts a basic framework. You can, if you're looking at what you can, where your children are, and analyzing kind of where are they and where do they need to go, and you see, well, they're having trouble with their friends, so they're dropping down a little bit from esteem and self-respect, independence and achievement. They're dropping down one level to friendship, intimacy, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
And then you can work with them on that and then help boost them up to the esteem needs, so that if they're 13 and and they need to work on the geeking out, they have the third level of Maslow's hierarchy. So you can kind of evaluate from there as well.
I love that. And it's useful to point out the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is really it's really a recommendation of what the parents' curriculum is, what we should be doing to support the child's growth in this way. It's not as you just said, it's a really easy to understand track. The details matter, and it's something that you can get from a lot of other places, which Maslow himself gets into. But understanding Maslow's hierarchy is a good brief way to understand that process. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally. And it's not it's all of this is just helpful tools to evaluate. None of it's set in stone. I know people like to get very, oh well, very rigid about it. And none of this is rigid, including
Hmm.
yeah, any of it. None of it's rigid, but it's just helpful tools.
Yeah, I agree. And so if you've done this, and you'll help me out because I'm not looking at Maslow's hierarchy, but it should be we're looking at um, the first one, two, three, and really up to four levels of Maslow's hierarchy. Those are being addressed throughout the first two stages for sure, and they're being touched in the third stage. Really, they're being touched even in the late second stage, for sure. As far as being able to be industrious and capable, and having a sense of industry and self-esteem for the way that you're able to accomplish various things that you find meaningful and that are necessary as a consequence of being a human on the planet Earth. And so those things are present really in earlier ages, but they have to be solidified by the third stage. They need to be settled in up to that third or fourth level of Maslow's hierarchy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, they do. If you're the first three stages are physiological, safety, and love. And I mean, if kids don't have all the way up to the third level, if they don't feel love from the parents and they're not feeling um, safe and loved, they're not going to be able to.
You're stalled. You're stalled out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I think
They're,
that's absolutely right.
they're not able to overcome some of that stuff, and they're not able to focus on academics. They're not able to focus on becoming industrious.
I mean, we can't in our own lives as parents if these kinds of things are not taken care of, and so we're responsible for that for our children. So we must be providing it. That's absolutely right. And then you get to the third stage of the Socratic approach. You get to stages around age 12 to 16, and the parents and your associated teachers and the adults in the room that are responsible for how your child is doing, you are um, you're now going to do something, which is introduce the child to a discipline or an idea that will lead them through those higher levels of Maslow. They're going to lead them up, and they're going to give them opportunity to explore, favorite phrase, geeking out on something that matters to them and really learning it at a profound and deep and visceral level. Then when they do that with at least one thing, better two, but even just one, now you can say, okay, maybe this person now is able to be trained. They are trainable. They have discipline over their body. They have a good moral character. They have discipline over their mind, meaning they can get themselves to learn something. And now we need to set you before the various, what you would call masters. We need to get you into a guild. We need to make you an apprentice under the training programs that will make you good at fill in the blank, whatever it is that child's doing. That is the fourth stage. And to put this into perspective, why, even up until age 13, 14, 15, the Socratic approach, your queen bee and your Uncle Owl at this moment are saying, you don't need to be taking academics for the entire K through 12 process of academics super seriously, is because guess what? If you've reached age 15 and you can teach yourself, you can cover the entirety of the K through 12 required academic disciplines between age 15 and 17, no problem. No problem. Easy. It's a completely different uh, ability, and you've fashioned an engine that can go 120 miles an hour and get work done at that point. And trying to force that into a 7-year-old or then a 11-year-old or even a 14-year-old who has not established discipline over the body and discipline over the mind is not only a Sisyphean exercise in futility, it is really frustrating for children and for parents and for teachers. It's very frustrating. But at this point, they should be able to do it. And guess what? They will. Anyone ever seen that happen?
Yeah, well, yeah, with my brother, it happened. He was able to catch up on a lot of stuff that he hadn't done. Yeah, he was somewhat unschooled. He did some basic math stuff and some classes at co-op, but he was basically unschooled until high school when he decided he was going to completely geek out on math and went to higher levels. I had something else I was going to say right there, and
Uh-huh.
I don't remember what it was.
We can capture it. I could start and then you can interrupt me if you'd like, if you think of it.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
my response to that, what you were just saying, and why I posed it this way is because when you need to have formally proven to most states is getting their GED and moving on past the K through 12 education system so that they can then go pursue what they want. And I actually would encourage most people to consider very seriously doing that when the child is ready to do that. Meaning, if there's a point that they're ready to complete the K through 12 education, and that's maybe age 16 or maybe age 17, and they could go pursue a trade or go to, if they're going to college, great, get them into the local community college and do the first couple of years of serious college work. It's like the earlier you can do that, the better. Now, what I don't mean is the earlier you can make your child do that, even if you don't know if they're ready. That's not it. It's once the child has exhibited the personal scholarship, the personal discipline to be able to, work something out, work through something, learn something, and prove it. Once they're ready to do that, hit the gas, give them stuff to work on, get them functional in those basic competencies that are required for pretty much every K through 12 system within our these states of the United States. It's very easy at that point, and then there's no reason to even wait until they're 18 to finalize that. Get that accomplished whenever they can. If they start being this way at age 14 and they can test out of a GED by age 16 when they have a car, and you can get them into an apprenticeship that they can drive themselves to, guys, do that. That's what you should do because they're ready for more formal training, or even informal that will lead toward formal training, in the direction of whatever they're interested in, that they could be very good at, that they actually like, that the world needs from them. And that can start and should start as soon as that's capturable.
So I have two things to say, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was what had thought of before or not, but so self-actualization being the top one. On the picture I'm looking at of Maslow's hierarchy, it says desire for truth and wisdom, and I think that's really a key here is
Yes.
truth as they find it, and truth takes there's so many different avenues to find truth and to find wisdom, and depending on what you're interested in. And so allow them the space to find the truth and the wisdom that they are seeking in whatever area they're seeking it. I also
Can
wanted
I
to,
can I pop in
yeah,
for
yeah.
that? Because there is such thing as maybe ultimate truths and ultimate wisdoms, and there's capital T truth and capital W wisdom. But one thing that is part of self-actualization is the truth and wisdom within the domain that they're working in. There's a way to become a person who has pragmatically and has realized the ability to work in their field, in their discipline, whatever it is they're doing, their trade, and they develop truths and wisdom that are in their fingers, that are in their mind, that are in their heart as they are doing their work. That's one of the key features of that self-actualization when it's practical in the world that we live in, that they do in fact achieve a certain kind of realization and understanding of the truth and wisdom that no one else can have.
Yeah, I love that. And that's kind of what I meant by many avenues of truth.
Exactly. I agree. That's what I was thinking about.
I like the way you defined that. I also want to say, just as a parenting experience, sometimes kids revert a little bit to, they maybe when they're in high school and they know they have a good moral framework, but they revert a little bit to, some kind of maybe mischievous activities, but they know deep down. I wouldn't be discouraged by that kind of thing. There's always some kind of reverting, and maybe even testing of limits to be sure that, oh yeah, that's the morality, or that's the physical stuff that I learned as a kid. I need to express it a little bit more at a
Yep.
different age. There's always some kind of reverting. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged by that. There's always a little bit, and you just have to bring them back. And they know that, and the more they do that, the more they can do that themselves as well. And so as a parent, you're just the facilitator of helping them to get back to where they were. And then my daughter, I was going to talk about her. I don't, oh my gosh, maybe I need more coffee. She, I don't remember what it was. But yeah, the kids, yeah, reverting is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a reminding of what they learned as a kid. The foundation is already there, and you just have to remind them of why that foundation is there, whether it be morality, that they learned in the first stage, or discipline over their body that they learned in the second stage, or discipline over their mind that they learned in the third stage, and they have to relearn or remember as adults. None of that is necessarily bad. It's almost like a reiterating of the previous stages. Would you agree with that, Uncle Owl?
This is a sort of complex topic. You're highlighting something that's really hard to get right as parents, because most of us, as we were going through it, we weren't being led, and this is not a complaint at our parents or our teachers. We weren't being led to think about these things explicitly. And it's really meaningful to look back on it now and try your best to gain a sense of what you just described at that level, so that you're better able to take care of your children when they're in these experiences. It's actually something, maybe maybe it's meaningful to describe that in the early stages 1 and 2, we talk about having physical and moral discipline, and developing a sense of morality. And at that age, thankfully, their moral universe, the moral landscape, is much simpler. That's why Aesop's fables, as deep and profound as they are, because they cover a lot of parts of, they cover a lot of aspects of human experience. They're easy to understand because at the level of the child, they'll understand what a race is, and they'll understand why a tortoise is slower than a hare and stuff like that. It's very, very useful to think of that. But listen, by the time you're 15, your moral landscape has become infinitely more complex. And the stories that are available to indicate and inform your morality and virtue that are available, that's the reason they become more complicated. I mean, for that, I would recommend C.S. Lewis. I would recommend even Harry Potter. I would recommend, especially for boys, and I said boys, not just girls, reading Jane Austen. Um, you'll realize that at that age, you're going to live out being more mischievous, because now you're more morally capable. You're now more able to inflict problems or be a part of what's good. And you should. I don't want to say should as in it's a good thing. I'm just saying it will be somewhat a necessary process for it's inevitable that you will bump up against those fences and bump up against the envelope to find out what the consequences are for being a bit mischievous. And so it's really what you just said is right. Number one, as parents, try not to be discouraged by that. And on the other side, you have to be really careful about how you respond. You actually can give a 13 or a 14-year-old a real lifelong trouble if, when they, butt up against mischievously butt up against the proverbial fence from a moral perspective, if you do not know how to respond in a way that's helpful. It's very easy to just smack down, and that actually could give them. I don't want to paint this in a super heavy way, but I'm really glad you brought this up. It's really important. You could give them a lifelong problem with that. if you don't know how to help guide them. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have any negativity in response to, someone doing something really, mischievous or even worse than that, maybe criminal or damaging. But it's very easy to uh, not bear that responsibility with a healthy amount of maturity is the right word, but another word might be just grace and patience. It doesn't mean you're supposed to thank them or pat them on the back for it. You're supposed to just you may not want to be too heavy-handed in response to that.
I agree. And those, I think this, I was thinking especially of like late teens and early 20s, and when you're trying to explore whether what you learned morally as a kid is actually truth and it is actually applicable. And there's, like you said, it's a lot more complex at that age, and there's a lot more detail that goes into it. And handling your kids with grace, I think, is the key at this point, and letting them make their own judgments. And hopefully they're within the general relative framework as your moral judgments.
Right.
And you have that foundation built already. And usually it's if they have good morals, that if you've built that, helped them build that good moral framework from the time that they were little, you don't have a whole lot to worry about when they get older, because those are tried and true moral foundations.
I think it's meaningful to say that they will get all sorts of responses to their mischievous and bad behaviors, from, someone smacking them back in line, whether that was a neighbor or an aunt or a grandma, and then they should get, the genuine response of disappointment from you, and, realization that acting that way is not good, and under as you just put it, which is absolutely correct, under a shared framework of morality is very good. But you don't want to be the one with the heavy hand. It's better for it. And I don't mean this to say that teachers should be laying hands on children. What I mean is, a good example would be like the Harry Potter stories. He had teachers like Dumbledore, and he had teachers like Professor McGonagall. And Professor McGonagall did not accept any student's nonsense, period. She was a no nonsense person. And that's actually good for children, to have someone in your life who's going to smack you back in line immediately, period. And then to have also parents, and parents are going to provide a different kind of response to your bad behavior, but it shouldn't be permissive. It should also not be overly harsh. But yes, the shared framework, if you're in the ages of 12 to 16, hopefully by now you have already established that shared framework. And that is actually what I wanted to speak about in the most important things to think about for the fourth stage, for stage 4, the stage where they are achieving new levels of the pursuit of knowledge and aiming themselves toward mastery, or an apprenticeship to become very good at something that they actually enjoy, that the world needs from them. You need to have established these foundational matters prior to this. We've already discussed it once and twice, what the Maslow's hierarchy looks like, but I think we'll spend just another minute now to describe those levels one more time with a little bit of descriptors, so that you can see that by establishing those foundations of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for a good 15 years of a person's life, by the time they're 16 and ready to settle into the pursuit of an apprenticeship or a training period where they become good at something, you're going to need those. And Queen Bee, I'm going to toss it right back at you again. If you want to walk us through the entire pyramid of the Maslow's hierarchy, as brief as you'd like, or fill in with whatever you'd like.
Yeah, so there's 5 levels of Maslow's hierarchy. The base level is what you need before you can make your way up the pyramid. So imagine you're starting at the bottom of a pyramid in Egypt, and you're walking up the steps all the way to the top. So you can't go up unless you have to go from bottom to top. You can't go any other direction. So the
Hmm.
very bottom step is physiological needs. I keep saying psychological, but I mean physiological needs.
It's both,
Um,
but at that point, it's focused on, yes, the physiological.
right. So food, water, and shelter. If you don't have food, water, and shelter, you are not going to be able to do any type of education. And a lot of times, this is what teachers are up against actually at schools is children that are homeless or don't have food needs met. They're not going to be focused on math whatsoever. They don't even care about that. The second step is safety needs. So insulation from threats, predictability, stability. So this is where kids who are abused are not able to move past that. So you have to have the physiological needs met and the safety needs met. The third level is love needs. So love and affection, friendship, intimacy, those are the third level. So kids who, they have their food and water and shelter and they're not threatened, but they don't really have a good foundation of love and affection. They're not going to be able to move past those levels up to math. So yeah, like I said, a lot of teachers are running up against that kind of thing, especially, with regards to love, because I don't know, that seems to be the one to me. I don't know if that's true, Uncle Owl. I've never been a teacher, but that seems to be the one to me. Like most kids might have shelter and insulation from threats, but they don't have love and affection. Um,
Um,
the
you should go on and I'll come back around to that because that is a really good point.
Okay. The fourth step out of five is esteem needs. So independence, achievement, prestige, and self-respect. This is where we're starting to really get into if they're able to do something that's useful to other people, and that gives them the self-respect, the independence, the achievement, and the prestige. And so everybody likes that. Everybody wants to be able to put out something that's valuable. And then the very last stage is self-actualization. So this is desire for truth and wisdom and self-fulfillment. So you go from the difference between the fourth and the fifth step is going from putting out something that somebody else thinks is important to putting out something that you think is important. And searching for truth, searching for wisdom, and doing something that you perceive as valuable. It goes past the crowd.
I love that. I really love that. I developed a quick words for the first three stages of Maslow's hierarchy, and I wonder if you can help me. I tried to make them rhyme. So the first level is sustenance and nutrition. The second level is protection. The third level is connection. And then I don't know how we would go past that, but I've always thought that if you could get nutrition, protection, and connection right, even up to maybe age 12, you have succeeded as a parent. Like that is a huge deal to have established a solid foundation in those three basic points. And maybe that's the simplest way I could put it.
Yeah, that I completely agree with that. I like the way you put that. I remember being at a mom's group and we would say, "Well, we got them fed and they didn't die, so we're doing all right." And
Huzzah.
and it feels
That's
kind
my
of
motto every day
I mean, when
when
they're
my wife gets
little,
home from work.
right? And when they're little like that, I mean that's about what you can do. And I don't think you understand the value of it when you're in the trenches like that. But that's actually very, very important.
Absolutely. I love that. Now, how about moving on past the third stage to discuss could you bring it home for me? How does that lead the fourth stage? How does that help the fourth stage? We're getting to the point of the child pursuing a scholarship or an apprenticeship for their own pursuit of depth of knowledge, for something that they are skilled at, that they want to do, that the world needs from them. What are they touching of those upper levels? It's levels maybe 4 and 5.
So level four would be esteem needs. And I think this is where a lot of nerdy kids in school have a lot of hard time because they're doing achievement. They're achieving something, and it might only be appealing to the teacher or the people that are in they're not appealing to other kids, and so they have a hard time moving from esteem needs to self-actualization.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
so that's the way I see at least the difference between the fourth and the fifth is um, being able to put out something that's important to other people, and it has to be people that you care about. And so if you're only appealing to what the teacher wants, and the teacher may be the greatest teacher on the face of the planet, but if all your peers are making fun of you, and that self-respect isn't there. And that's, I think, what the nerdy kids in school have a hard time with. That's just my view of it.
Yep, I'm going to pick up right there because that was exactly what I wanted to say. It's that at that fourth stage, they don't need to be appealing to themselves anymore. They're going to derive confidence and self-esteem by having proven their ability in something, and they don't need the approval of random other untrained nobodies like their peers. They should be under an apprenticeship, a training under a teacher, but more likely it's going to be someone who's a skilled person or a skilled program, whatever you want to call it, somewhere where they're actually learning how to do something meaningful. And that could be academic. I'm not saying that everything is trade based. Academia is its own trade, if anyone's ever bothered to think about that. And you need to be appealing to them by your work and your efforts, and they will indicate to you if you're being successful. And that's where you will derive the most confidence from your competence by being indicated as such by an actual person who does that thing or who knows that subject or is capable in that field, that trade. That's actually what's necessary at that fourth stage. And sorry to say it, this means you've officially kicked your bird out of the nest. This is not parents' approval. This is the world telling them, hey, you're going the right direction. This is their trade, their discipline, the masters in that field saying, yes, you are joining us in being able to do that thing. And that the practical in real time instantiation or incarnation of that is whoever you're working under. And that is so missing and lacking, and it's replaced by a sea of fellow incompetent morons, which are your peers and yourself, in the federal penitentiary system, when it should be being tailored to actually address that child's competency in that field, whatever it is that they're working on. And that is what we're hoping for. That's what this is as close as it gets from the parent side to hitting the actual bullseye. But this is the process by which they actually do hit that bullseye.
So from being a novice to the hierarchy of needs, is there like newer terms? I've heard of it before, but having it broken down, I would say that to me, at first glance, it would seem like stage 3 and stage 4 kind of, in order for them to, like, I guess, progress into stage 4, so to speak, it's the parents' job in stage 3 to start building their esteem as well, and not beating them down or whatever. To, like, we all do it with our kids, like, oh, that's so great when they bring you a drawing or anything. So in order to start building that self-esteem, you should do that in stage 3, correct? Or I guess not should, but that's where the parents come in and start building their esteem.
The parents would be in the third level, which is love, affection, intimacy, and
This
then
aspect of parenthood, yes.
right,
The other
right.
two are required aspects of parenthood too.
They like, but that's true because I do get a lot of esteem from my parents still as an adult. But the fourth, there's a point, I think what Uncle Al was saying, that the fourth is where kids move on from their parents and they're starting to derive um, they're getting derived self-respect from outside, and hopefully masters in the field that they want to be masters in.
You know, Sober Dad Pod, I really like your responses so far, and I actually want to, I wouldn't say round out our discussion because we have maybe just a couple more minutes, but for the sake of everyone's time, we probably won't go too much longer. If you have young children, as in age 8 or younger, I would just like to say congratulations. If you already have a 14 or 15-year-old, we're talking about something that you may need to be thinking in terms of how you've been a parent so far. And you can, number one, you can go ahead and forgive yourself. It's fine. Everything that's happened up until now, it'll be fine. Your kids are resilient. But to remediate what we're talking about, if you already have a middle teenager, you're going to want to make sure that you've established these things. But if you've got young children, this is perfect because it should give you a very real sense of how long all of this process will take. Give yourself some grace, some patience. What's your phrase? Your Majesty, what is it? Grace-filled timeline?
I don't remember.
Great.
I may have said that.
I love it. I think you said grace-filled timeline. So if you have young children, you're thinking through these things with us now from a bird's eye view, and this should just settle into your internal organs. This is settle into your heart. What you're hoping to watch and work with your children to achieve, and to give everything that we're talking about the time needed. Now, on the parent side, from Maslow's hierarchy, the basic nutrition level and the protection level, yeah, you're going to want to go ahead and take care of those immediately, because those are the basic, survival that's necessary for humans to feel, safe and cared for. And then you're walking into the third one with connection. And what you just pointed out was they bring you a drawing and you say, wow, really great. Really, as parents, you should never lose that. You should never lose that. Whatever they're working on and they bring it to you and they say, hey, wasn't this neat? The worst thing you can do is be like, oh yeah, that's okay. I mean, you could have done something as such and such better. One of the right ways to say a compliment to a child that brought you a drawing, maybe if they're like age 10, is to say, yeah, I like how you did that, but that isn't very good, is it? And if they're 6 and you said that, or if they're 4 and you said that, that would just be devastating. But if they're 10 or 11, they should probably be able to handle that. And there's something like that's something like the process of transferring a sense of, hey, you could make that excellent if you wanted. And hopefully they do that for themselves. But I say this because there's a story that I personally have, my regarding my handwriting. So my mother, God bless her, she was super hard on us, especially the boys. I shouldn't say especially the boys. She was hard on my sister too, but our sister was the youngest child and also a girl. There were 3 boys above her, and she hated my handwriting. Oh my gosh, my mother was so hard on my handwriting. Now, she was hard on my oldest brother's handwriting too, but it was water off a duck's back to him. He didn't even care. He still has terrible handwriting. But my mother, when I was in, I don't know, maybe I was 11 or 12 or something, there was a summer thing, and she made me take a calligraphy class. And of course, as a 11, 12-year-old boy, I probably wouldn't have chosen that. In fact, I think my older brother did choose that the year before. He liked it. He was quite the artist, and I was not really. But I took the class, and then you know what? The next summer, I voluntarily took that class again because I enjoyed it. And there was something about being told that I need to, work on that with the higher quality related to my handwriting, that it's been a lifelong joy for me to have been told that. I think if I'd been told that at age 6, when no one has good handwriting, that would have been very hard. But at age 11, 12, I could handle that. And so I just use that as an example of, parents are supposed to be complimentary and positive. They're also supposed to be, a reflection of encouraging, you could say, calling forth the best that child has within them. And you can do that as a parent in a way that still sounds like, hey, yeah, let's take this thing and let's put it up on the fridge with a magnet. But at the same time, if they're 10, 11, 12, you don't want to keep doing that as if everything they do is perfect. They need to be brought into a realization that something they could be doing could have higher quality. And, how you introduce that is depends on the timing, and it depends on your relationship with that child. So I'm not trying to prescribe something there, but just something very interesting to think about.
I agree. And I think that if they're 10, 11, 12, and they're still drawing like they're, 6 or 4
Hmm.
or something, they know it.
They know it.
And
Yeah.
they don't want to be coddled. They want you to give them an honest answer. And I think that's part of parenting. And I also wanted to bring out that with the Maslow's hierarchy, we travel up and down that our entire lives. And
Yes.
parents are important to their kids, even as adults, because, if I have, as an adult, if I suddenly have shelter issues, I happen to know that my parents would move me right into their house. And having that foundation and just having that knowledge, that's really encouraging.
That's such a good example. I love that. I wanted to discuss a little bit further on the word remediation, and this might be where we close out for our discussion today. Remedial work versus having worked through the foundational stages. at the right age, at the right time, is something that we all have to take seriously. Basically, for every child, including yourself, your experience wasn't perfect. You got to age 18 with a certain amount of what we're talking about, a certain amount of success. And you also got to age 18 with a bunch of things that you got wrong and that you weren't that good at, and you needed to remediate. You needed to work on before you pursued, greater ability and discipline in other things. This is true for everyone. The one thing you want to think as parents is you want to not have been the limiting factor for that for the sake of your child. So what we're talking about here that I'd like to describe is in the fourth stage, basically the entire realm of research into academia is really focused on how to produce the best education. And so you'll get into college or you have late high school discussions of how to be the best student, and they'll give you all sorts of different methods and tricks and tips, and this is how to remember things better and this is how to read better. All of those things are great. But really, if you got to age 20 and you don't know how to take a class, that actually is a sign that you did not get the previous stages solidly worked into your ability, your person, when it was time. It's now time for you to be able to do that, and you're having to catch up and figure that out. And that may be true for lots of aspects of life, but you don't want to have that be pretty much everything about your character. And it's just meaningful to point out, and this is true for any parents who have late teens, so you can give yourself some grace, forgive yourself, it's okay. But you're really better off working these things out up until the fourth stage instead of trying to suddenly in the fourth stage or the age range of the fourth stage or the world's demand on 18, 19, 20, 25-year-olds when they didn't get this. That is a catastrophic place to be. It's very difficult and disorienting. The world is disorienting and difficult when you are expected to be a major after having been a minor. Anyway, much less if you have all of these things facing you that you needed to have put into you before. And I personally, your Uncle Al, some other time we'll talk about it. I have a great method for how to take a class, and I have taken countless. I say countless. I could actually count them, but anyway, it feels like dozens of students who were, CDF students or dropping out, or they've already been on academic probation and they've been ditched by a school, and so they're at a new school, and they don't know how to take class well. And I can give them a method by which they can take a class and turn them into A students or A and B students. And they've never been such a thing before in their life, but it still took 2 or 3 or 4 semesters. It still took time for them to figure that out. What we're working on here, what the Socratic approach should be as the view of the bullseye of raising children into adults who are very good at something that they love, that the world actually needs from them. If you're doing this even half decently, you will be solidifying these key and core competencies and principles of how to be successful in school, in a trade, in a vocation, in a job, after age 16, 17, 18, by having done the work of the first 3 stages from ages 0 to 12 to 16. Thoughts?
Well, I do have a little story about that.
Go for it.
When I was in right after I finished college, actually, I took a class on how to take tests that I've taken everywhere with me, and I was super annoyed by it because I wish they would have told me how to take. It's mostly multiple choice tests. So taking the NCLEX was kind of difficult, but I took this class and it taught me how to choose the right answer basically every time. And I barely even have to read the question now without I can figure it out really quickly. And I was so annoyed because I was like, why did you tell me this after I finished college? So
That is a common tale. I think people could say that happens with a lot of parts or aspects of learning and academia, that there are a number of things that you get told much later than it would have been more helpful if you had been told it earlier. So I agree with that. And maybe there's no way to cover every single one of those things, but you would like to think that what you just said would have been covered earlier. So I think that's a good example.
Well, to be honest, though, I probably would have used that to my advantage because I probably wouldn't have read the test questions very well, wouldn't have thought about it as thoroughly. I'd have just
Yep.
gone, oh, well, that can't be that one, can't be that one. All right, it's one of these two, 50-50 shot.
I love that. These this overarching attitude, the Socratic approach, It's why it's not technically a method. We're not trying to outline every single one of the things like what Her Majesty just mentioned, is trying to be covered by the Socratic approach. These things need to be taken seriously and covered by whatever means by which you are training your children. My sense is that there will be many cases like that easily could be missed, and then you discover it, a couple years after graduating college, for example, and you're like, why wasn't I shown this before? But to me, this statement rings true. So many students, when I would discuss for them how to take a course well, they would say things like, why wasn't I described this earlier? Why wasn't this a part of the training for how to be a successful student earlier? And I would say I have two responses to that. Number one is it didn't matter until you were in the fourth stage. That's the first thing I'd say. It matters in the fourth stage. It matters a lot less in stages 1 and 2. It might start mattering in stage 3, but if you've done the hard work and successfully the work of the stages of stage 1 and 2 and 3, then when shown that in the beginnings of stage 4, how to take a class well, you should have a moral and character and physical and mental discipline to adopt it immediately and become successful at taking classes. So yes, that is when those kinds of things should be being really worked out. But the remediation I was thinking of wasn't really remediation or good training and instruction in how to take courses, but remediation in more human needs, more related to your human character. That remediating those things is often very difficult by the time a person already has reached 17 or 18. Like, for example, not staying up super late playing video games. I'm not saying people don't need to do that. I'm saying that's a sign that that person doesn't have anything better to do. And I'm saying not procrastinating until the absolute very latest possible moment to read a book and then write a paper on it. That should happen sometimes when you're a student over the age of 15 and maybe through college, because you're so busy that you really genuinely forgot. But you shouldn't be doing that with every part of your life, because all that says is that no one can ever get you to do anything. And I have a balanced perspective of that. I'm not saying that should always be the case, but I would say, hoping and praying for A's when you spent the entire semester not studying well is just silly. That's the behavior of someone who has a very poor character and is undisciplined. And the goal of the fourth stage is to have already worked through the first 3 stages so that you have established meaningful discipline to be able to be successful in stage 4.
So, the Ron Paul curriculum, I actually don't use it, but I like it a lot. They have for their high school, they have an actual how to take classes
Great.
class, and they have a speed reading class, and also you are not required, but they expect you to be able to do all your schoolwork by 5th grade independently. I'm not sure I quite agree with that, especially depending on the maturity of the kid, but I like where it's headed, just based on the fact that you expect from your kids, and whatever you expect is what you're going to get. So you're expecting a lot from them, and you're hopefully getting a lot from them as well, and helping them to work through that and figure it out. But anyways, I think those 2 classes are really good on there. The speed reading class and the how to take classes class in the high school.
Yes, I love that. For sure, a how to take classes class before you are in a college program, that sounds like a necessity. And that you can take that to the bank. If you've never heard that before, you just heard it. Yes, I absolutely would agree with that, because the demand being set on the 9th grader, the freshman, is not the same as the demand being set on the college freshman. And you should not try to be, in fact, this is why so many people drop out, or so many people spend their first 2 years of college making terrible grades, is because the number one thing they're learning is not the subject or the content of the subjects of the classes that they're taking. The number one thing they're learning is how to be a decent student. And that should have been remediated a long time ago.
Agree.
So we've discussed this, and now my view is that this fourth stage is the expansion into a personal knowledge, a personal odyssey of the top 2 layers of Maslow's hierarchy. You're establishing genuine competence with genuine independence which you're going to have for the rest of your life. And if you have competence, that should provide a certain amount of confidence and sense of self-respect. A lot of the problems of middle schoolers and high schoolers and even college age students is that they actually don't respect themselves very much because they can't do anything, and they're right. They're not even wrong. We don't want them to be negative about it, but it's because they haven't done anything with themselves. And so we hopefully can get that done prior to that stage. And then when they're in this fourth stage, they may even be experiencing some kinds of achievement and even enjoying a certain amount of prestige because the people that are the competent, what do you want to call them, the masters of their fields are looking at their work and saying, look, you're not a master yet, kid, but you've done the first level that we've expected of you. You've done it as well as anybody we've ever seen. This is great work. And that is the proper realm of confidence. Confidence should be the result of competence. And as you're older, it can't just be faked confidence. It needs to be based on something real. And if you've done this, then you've created a character and an ability and a life that maybe will even give you a job that helps support you and your family. And you can begin to pursue something about being a genuine person in the world that allows you to, this word is self-actualize. And I like to use a lot of other words too. It allows you to pursue the deeper matters of human life, and not from a totally academic, intellectual, not unreal way of thinking. It should be embedded in your actual practical life. It should be embedded in your personal place as a person within your family, within a society, within a job role, within a field, within a discipline. And there is much truth and wisdom to be pursued through that process. And one of my favorite persons to point to this is not because this person said it better than everybody else or that no one else has said it before, but Dr. Jordan Peterson speaks a lot about people go be a good plumber. If you're a good plumber, you're not just a plumber. If you're a good plumber, you're also a businessman. You maybe even have employees, and so you're doing something as a role in society that includes being a pillar to your community. You're a part of fixing people's plumbing. You've even got a few employees. You're taking care of their livelihood and their income, as well as their families, as well as your own. And so this is the kind of interconnection and capacity for us having a community that is useful and a society that is healthy. It's based on humans that have been raised as children into adults that are very good at doing something that they love, that the world actually needs from them. And this is the kind of thing that unfolds as being a helpful, useful, meaningful member of society from which you will receive the right kind of appreciation and the right kind of prestige and the right kind of sense of achievement. And that will allow you to become a person who can pursue that highest level of what it means to be on the planet Earth. You can pursue our desire for truth and wisdom.
Yeah, so that's the ultimate goal, right? To get to that fourth stage, where they can do the serious training and the serious serious self-actualization. That's the entire goal of
Yep.
parenting and homeschooling, and not homeschooling, even just parenting in general.
Isn't it? That's absolutely right. That's the goal. And the Socratic Approach by your Uncle Owl is a view to recognize that is our responsibility as parents. That's our part in the job. The part in the job does not mean you become the source of wisdom and truth for your children. And even thinking that way when your child is 6 years old is silly. You're the source of the first three levels, which are nutrition, protection, and connection. And you need to be developing their capacities in the first stage of just physical and moral development with basic literacy and numeracy. The second stage is discipline over their body. The third stage is discipline over their mind. And if you've done this in the context of all sorts of possible curricula or ways of teaching or methods, and there's loads of good books. The Prescotts have Kids Don't Need School, the 3 R's, it's Beachick, right? 3 R's is Beachick.
Yeah.
And
yes,
Ruth Beachick.
Yep. And all of those sources of practical day-to-day help should be embedded in your inner view, your inner lens of what you're doing with your children from ages. So here we are, maybe ages 0 to 18, 0 to 20.
All right. I think that's a good place to wrap it up from here. And again, I'm gonna digest all that. But yeah, I really am a fan of the Maslow's hierarchy. I've actually never heard that before, so I'm gonna dive into that a little bit more and share that around. But in wrapping up, if I can have ladies first, Her Majesty, where can people find you? What is your X handle and any other socials?
I'm at Bowtied Queen Bee on X. I'm basically only on X. I don't really care for other platforms. I think I have a technical one on Instagram, but I never am on that. I can be, yeah, just DM me anytime. I like DMs and I like helping people out with that kind of stuff.
And Uncle Owl.
Same. I'm mostly on X. You will be able to contact me through DMs. We really encourage you all to contact through us through DMs. There are lots of people who uh, maybe sheepishly say, "Hey, could I ask you this question?" We love it. We welcome them every single time. We're happy to chat with anybody about questions they have. Once again, that's at Bowtied Queen Bee for Her Majesty, and your Uncle Owl is at Uncle Owl on X. And we have our Hive and Nest podcast and our Hive and Nest account as well, which John will give you the details on now.
All right. So we have the Hive and Nest email is hiveandnestpodcast at gmail.com and hiveandnest at pm.me. And I'd like to remind everybody that we have our X Spaces every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Last week, we talked about curriculum and did some storytelling. And Uncle Owl, what is on the docket for this week?
We're for this next week, we're probably going to continue the discussion of curriculum from a new angle from the last two. Although we have been setting up some guest appearances for some more specific discussions that are currently hot and interesting, like our discussion with Robert Bordens of the Robert B. Show and the Prescotts for Homeschool Life LLC. They joined us a couple of weeks ago. We just had an absolute good time talking about, or I should say, trashing the government education cheese known as school vouchers. And but the coming soon, we should have some more guests, and we're not sure if next week will be one of the guests or if it will be a continued discussion on debunking the problem or myth of why curriculum is not a problem or the biggest thing to worry about when you're going to homeschool your children.
Great. And lastly, Her Majesty, you have any parting remarks? Anything you want to leave us with?
Just homeschool us and homeschool and DM us, and that's about it. And thanks for joining us. It's really good to be able to put some of this stuff out here and to talk to Uncle Owl and to you, Sober Dad, and thanks for joining.
Always. Uncle Owl, anything?
Just a huge thank you. The idea that anyone at all even wants to listen to this just makes me filled with gratitude every single time, and we appreciate every single one of you and your time, and we would look forward to chatting with you all more.
Agreed. And lastly, if you guys are listening to this, please follow and subscribe, share all those good things on your favorite platform. And with that, I will say goodbye.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.